What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's review I come to you once again with another top 10 ranking video for the Transformers Studio Series line. However, in this video I'm actually going to be ranking the most difficult and the hardest to find figures to come out from the Transformers Studio Series. This line has nearly been going for 3 years now, so there are bound to be some figures which have become a lot more desirable than others, and in this top 10 video I hope to convey and give you the figures that I have found to be the most difficult to obtain. Now this is either for various reasons, they were made in limited quantities, or for the reason that scalpers were just buying loads of them and reselling them for astronomical prices on the aftermarket, which the majority of these figures are actually victim of, or whether it's just because they're incredibly popular. So to begin with, we'll start off with the 10th spot. So the 10th spot for the figure that I have found to be the most difficult to track down after purchasing it would have to go to the Transformers Age of Extinction Deluxe Class Shadow Raider. Now, I really don't know why this figure goes for so much. Now, you may be wondering, well, I can find this at my local retail. This video is primarily going to be based upon my own personal experiences here in the UK and looking at various aftermarket prices. So Shadow Raider is one that is sold out all across online stores, and I never saw this particular figure at retail. We don't really tend to get many Studio Series figures here in the UK at retail anyway. They always have to be sourced via online retailers or sites such as eBay, which is where I get the majority of my figures from. But Shadow Raider here was one that I never saw once on the shelf, and I believe that that's for a few reasons. I believe obviously UK distribution has to factor into that, but the reasoning behind why I believe this figure sold out for so many places was because people were merely buying him up because, in my personal opinion, I actually think this is the cooler out of the two molds. Now of course the original mold of this figure was the Age of Extinction Deluxe Class Lockdown, which was great in its own right, but this version I think has just something about it that really draws collectors in. And personally for me, I think it's the amazing head sculpt and the fact that this actually comes with Lockdown's blaster, and it also has a really nice redeco for the vehicle mode. It is actually an orange Lamborghini, which was accurate to the Age of Extinction movie. There were various different coloured Lamborghinis in the final battle of Age of Extinction, so that is where I believe that this figure originates from. But you can see here that just bringing him in for a closer look, that head sculpt is absolutely amazing. And for those collectors who purchased the first version of Lockdown, they of course bought this one to get the movie accurate face shielded mask that we see Lockdown use in Age of Extinction. This one also comes with a proper blaster that we see Lockdown use within the Age of Extinction movie, something which we never saw come with the original Studio Series version. And I also believe that this figure was rather difficult to obtain because usually repaints tend to be produced less than their original counterparts, and that's just because fewer people buy them. If you have bought a previous figure of the same mold, you're more than likely not going to pick up the second release, especially if it's not really a character that Hasbro don't think people are going to care about. I mean, after that wave came out with the Shadow Raider, the Ratchet, the VW Bug, Bumblebee and the KSI Sentry, we haven't really got that many repainted waves since that, and that was really the first wave where we got the majority of the repaints. So I really do think that they just put that out to test the waters and only made a very small production quantity. Personally though, I actually think that this is a great entry into the Studio Series line. I do think it's a shame that Hasbro haven't continued down the repainted route. I do actually think there's quite a few figures that I would definitely double dip and get them again if they were to perhaps have repainted them. But this one, I can definitely see why the aftermarket price goes so high, seeing he has an amazing head sculpt, a really awesome looking blaster, as well as a super cool Lamborghini alt mode. So just propping him back down into his spot. And moving on to the 9th pick, I've decided to go with the Transformers Studio Series Age of Extinction Drift. This was another one that actually did hoard the shelves for quite some time. I actually did see this here at retail in the UK, and I remember going to the particular shop that I was seeing it in, and it was always there up until I'd say about 4 months ago, where it just completely vanished. Never was restocked on the shelf again, and then after checking all of the online listings, it's completely sold out everywhere. eBay have got this figure for going double and in some cases triple the pricing, and I think that that's because this is such an improvement over the original version of the Age of Extinction Drift that we've got. Now this figure was initially just a retool, a very heavy retool I may add, of a rather lackluster Studio Series Dropkick, but I think Hasbro did a tremendous job with this and really made that mold drift. This looks incredible, and I have no problem in saying that this is the best mass-produced drift that Hasbro have ever created. I think that if the Bugatti Veyron version of drift is half as good as this one, we're definitely in for a really, really cool figure. This has so much going for it. An amazing looking robot mode with some phenomenal paint apps, great accessories, amazing head sculpt, really stellar articulation, a super interesting transformation, and his helicopter mode is fantastic. One of the best deluxes to come out of this line in my opinion, so I can definitely see why he goes for so much on the aftermarket and why he's now so difficult to obtain. Taking the 8th spot, I have found, to my surprise, goes to KSI Sentry. Now this one, I cannot think as to why it goes for so much. This one here has doubled and increased in its price, and you really and truly cannot find this on any online site or at mass retail. I actually never saw this one at mass retail, as it did come packaged in the same wave as the Shadow Raider. So once again, I do believe that this was perhaps picked up in limited quantities, and seeing as this is supposed to be an unnamed droid from Age of Extinction, perhaps collectors bought multiples of these in order to army build. That's definitely something which is apparent from some of the other Hasbro lines, such as the Black Series, Marvel Legends. Collectors do tend to buy multiples of certain figures in order to army build, so this is definitely one that I can see having that done to him. So that's another reason why I think he's perhaps so difficult to obtain. Another reason behind why I think he's so difficult to obtain is because he's actually quite different from the original version of Stinger. He has a brand new head sculpt, and this was a character that once again we never got in Age of Extinction. The Decepticons for the original AOE toy line were bare minimum when it comes to toys, so to finally get this, I can see collectors going crazy for it. And it also had a brand new bayonet weapon as well, which was super cool, and it actually really does separate it apart from Stinger. It also has a completely different paint scheme. It's completely blue now rather than the red that Stinger had, making it look upon the shelf at first glance an entirely new figure. So this is definitely one that I can understand as to why it is now so hard to obtain. However, upon originally purchasing it, I would never have thought that this was so difficult to obtain. This one really for me wasn't one that I was necessarily too excited for. However, upon looking at the aftermarket price, I'm so glad that I did in fact pick this up. Moving on now to the 7th spot, we go to the car mode version of Dropkick. Now, of course, this one was going to be difficult to obtain. After an incredibly lackluster first release for Dropkick, Hasbro absolutely nailed it when they came to their second version. This one is by far one of the best deluxes to come out of the Studio Series. In robot mode, he looks so imposing. Check out his phenomenal looking head sculpt. This is a beautiful representation of Dropkick all the way around. Barely minimal back kibble, just such a good figure. Really well made, sturdy plastic. Fantastic transformation, decent enough articulation, and vehicle mode is really, really well done. This figure here, I had no surprises when seeing that this one was rather hard to obtain, and similarly to that of Drift, this was one that was actually available for a considerable amount of time. It wasn't until late that it's just completely vanished off of all of the online retailers, and now goes for triple and double its original price point. It's really quite crazy to me how much the price can influx over a few months. But once again, for Dropkick, I can definitely see why. Coming now to the 6th most difficult figure, you'll actually be rather surprised with me on this one. It actually goes to leader class Jetfire. Now, I know the majority of you are probably thinking, well, he should be so much more higher up on the list. He's so difficult to find. Well, here in the UK, he never once made it to retail. I always saw Dark of the Moon Megatron, but I never saw his wavemate Jetfire. And I think that that's once again just down to distribution. Figures now come packed one per case, and sometimes two of the same figure per case, than rather an assortment like they used to. So Jetfire, for some strange reason, never made it over to UK shores. He sold out almost instantly on online retailers, and on eBay now he goes for double his price point, and I think that's for so many reasons. First of all, because of the nostalgia. Jetfire was one of those characters that when you think of him, he really reminds you of the Transformers Revenge of the Fallen movie. He was the standout character for me, and I'm pretty sure he was for many others. I also think that his design is absolutely fantastic, and the Studio Series recaptured this beautifully. He has a really sophisticated transformation, and he can also come apart and combine to the Optimus Prime in order to create the Jet Power Prime. This figure is just an all-round pleaser, and I can see as to why so many collectors were picking this one up, because he's just absolutely fantastic. I still think he's one of the best Studio Series figures, at least one of the best leader classes. He's just so well done. So once again, a very understandable figure as to why he is now so rare. But he's not as rare as some of the other figures that I'm going to be discussing in my final top 5. Taking the 5th spot for being one of the rarest Studio Series figures goes to the Transformers Studio Series Rampage. This one is so hard to find. This is once again another example of how drastic the price could increase. This one was packaged with that version of Optimus Prime, so really and truly this whole assortment of Voyagers was one that you really wanted to pick up. Here in the UK, once again, he never made it to retail. I never saw him once at retail, and really and truly the only way to acquire him was through online retailers, and not even on eBay could you find him for a decent retail price. And I even believe that some of the online retailers were actually charging more for this figure than they would for the standard Voyager. So for some reason here in the United Kingdom we really didn't get a great deal of stock for Rampage, and he never got a restock. Now this figure now is well over 1 year old, and considering that there is now coming up a Studio Series Skipjack, I'm sure that his rarity will begin to slightly dip, especially the aftermarket price that we see now on eBay. But I can see exactly why this figure went for so much and was so popular amongst collectors, because the original version was garbage. The first version that we got in Revenge of the Fallen of Rampage was a terrible figure. So to get a more accurate scaled Voyager, more movie accurate detailing, and the fact that he's actually a component of Devastator, I can definitely see as to why he's so difficult to obtain, and in my opinion he is my favourite out of all of the 8 Constructicons. So 5th spot here definitely goes to Rampage. Moving on now to the 4th most difficult figure to find, that goes to Studio Series Ironhide. This one here, I have no idea why he is so difficult to find. Ironhide is one of the core essential members of the Autobot team and was in 3 of the live action movies. So I definitely don't think that Hasbro made less of him. I just think that he was so popular amongst collectors that everyone just bought him. You know, he is a fantastic figure and arguably is actually better than the movie Masterpiece figure. In my humble opinion, I actually think he is better, and I even said that in my MPM Ironhide review. This one accomplishes so much at the Voyager price point and is such a well-made figure. This is one of the best made figures out of the entire Studio Series. The plastic is so thick, the articulation, whilst it may be limited in some areas due to the design, I think that it's more than adequate, and he's just such an amazing figure. I mean, check out the head sculpt. That looks superb. Definitely a fantastic figure, and similarly to that of Jetfire, he was one of the standout characters from the Transformers movie. He was definitely one of my favourite Autobots until he was brutally killed off in the 3rd film, so I can 100% see why he was so highly sought after, and even now he goes for about triple his original price point. This one here goes for about £75, which is absolutely crazy. I haven't really found this one going for anything less than £50, so definitely a very difficult figure now to acquire. If we move on to the 3rd spot, that goes to Battle Damaged Megatron. Now this one here I think is mainly down to the fact that this was actually an exclusive. Now an exclusive to where, I have no idea. I do think he was just an online exclusive. He never came here to retail in the UK, and when he was in stock it was only for a very short amount of time, so I think that his quantity was definitely produced a lot less than some of the other figures, and he was actually the first version of a battle damaged variant that we had ever got into the Studio Series, and is actually the last. We haven't got a battle damaged variant of any other figure so far, so I'm really unsure about how this figure was thought about, as they haven't really covered the battle damage aspect of any of the other figures. And personally for me, I can't really see as to why this figure is so desirable. He does have a really nice head sculpt, but once again you can get this with one of the upgrade kits, and the paint apps, whilst they are slightly more visually appealing than the original version, I just think that having a battle damage representation in your collection isn't as good as having the more standard, more traditional looking version. So for me, the only reason I can think of as to why this figure is so highly sought after is because it was made in less quantities, and perhaps because it was an online exclusive. So Battle Damage Megatron for me definitely takes the 3rd spot. Now coming in at the 2nd spot and taking the 2nd place for being one of the most sought after figures goes to SS38 Bumblebee movie Optimus Prime. Now I can definitely see as to why this figure was so popular. This was one of the best designs to come out of that Bumblebee solo movie, and I remember collectors both from the movieverse and fans of the G1 cartoon series were craving a representation of that Optimus Prime in plastic form. So you didn't only have the movie fans after this, you also had the collectors of the G1 series and other Transformers continuities after this, so there was a considerable more demand for this release. And once again, I don't think Hasbro optimized on how many they made. This one here I think was only made once again in smaller quantities than some of your Bumblebee figures, so really and truly was quite a difficult figure to find from the offset, and he came packaged with Rampage, and I just think that that wave was really poorly distributed. I never saw this figure on retail, and I have never seen him go for a close to retail price on eBay or on any of the online retailers. And for good reason as well. This is a fantastic figure. This was one of my best figures from my end of year 2019 Transformers Studio Series ranking. Amazing articulation, phenomenal looking robot mode, and a really cool looking truck mode. And as I stated, one of the best designs of Optimus Prime from the movies, in my opinion, since the Dark of the Moon film. So the Bumblebee movie Optimus Prime definitely takes a very solid second space for being one of the most sought after figures. So taking the first spot of being the hardest figure to track down out of the Transformers Studio Series line goes to Deluxe Class Scrap Metal. Now this one completely baffles me. I have no idea why this one is so sought after. This literally sold out on online retailers. It never came to retail here in the UK, and he's just so hard to obtain. Even on eBay, there are very few listings. There are no listings currently in the United Kingdom, and the US listings, he goes for astronomical prices, and I really don't know why. All I can think of is that perhaps he was made in smaller quantities. I don't really even think Scrap Metal is a great figure. He definitely was one of my least favourite Constructicons, as I stated in my Constructicon ranking video. He's made out of quite sturdy plastic, and of course he is a component of Devastator, but it's not even like he's one of the core limbs. He's just merely 3 fingers, which of course you have to have in order to finish him, but he's not like an arm, or he's not a leg, he's not the torso. So I really am just completely baffled as to why Scrap Metal is so difficult to find and why he is so expensive. He is a deluxe class after all, and they honestly don't tend to go for very much anyway. So for Scrap Metal, it is just a complete mystery for me as to why he's so rare. So if someone can shed some light on that down in the comments, I'd be incredibly grateful. So there you have it. That is my top 10 list for some of the most sought after Transformers Studio Series figures. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know down in the comment section below, and be sure to let me know also down in the comments what other top 10 lists you'd like me to see. I've definitely got quite a few planned and coming up on the horizon, so be sure to stay tuned for them, as well as I've also got some upcoming Transformers Studio Series reviews coming really soon, so make sure you also subscribe so you can keep up to date with them. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below whether or not you were able to acquire any, or if not all of these figures, and if so, at what price. Did you have to pay scalper prices for these figures, or were you able to find them at retail? I'd be really interested to know your experiences with each of these releases, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.